Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, and welcome to this session, Supercharge Your Productivity, Mastering Prompt Engineering. And yeah, you might think on a Java conference, why are we going to talk about prompt engineering? Well, that is something I'm going to explain you. Why should you learn it? Why is it so interesting? But also, how can you actually start prompt engineering yourself? So we are going to walk through a framework that I've created to actually build the optimal prompts. And on the end of this session, I will have some very nice examples how you can supercharge your productivity and think, for example, about your IDE. So let's quickly dive into it. Because why should you learn prompt engineering? Well, imagine that someone is joining your company, a fresh new hire, and that person joins your team and tells you that he or she has never used Google or any other search engine before. How would you respond to that? Would you ask that person, well, how do you get your information then? And that person might tell you, well, I'm still going to a library. Or would you go and advise that person to actually start using Google because it will supercharge your productivity? What would you do? Well, this is actually the reason why I am doing those kind of talks, because I'm still seeing a lot of people not using tools like generative AI. Well, it's really supercharging my productivity. I've seen it myself, and I still cannot believe that people are not using it. So I really hope that I'm going to change that throughout this session and help you to supercharge your productivity with prompt engineering. So let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Jeroen Egelmeers, a prompt engineering advocate and public speaker at Society. I've been working as a Java and front-end developer at a lot of different companies. You can see them below, but I'm going to skip that for now because I want to dive with you in prompt engineering, because that is where I'm focusing currently within our company. We are really building some really cool tools and really seeing how we can improve our productivity throughout the organization at customers, but also, of course, internally. So I really hope to share that with you so you can do the same at your company. So let's get to an example. So why is prompt engineering so interesting, and what is the difference? So let's imagine that I'm back going to the high school for the very first time, and my teacher's asking me to write me an essay about World War II in 100 words. Well, I don't know about you, and I cannot ask it right now because it's online, but I'm really curious how you would do that back in the days, because I was a very lazy student and I would just write, if I had such a tool as ChatGPT, to write something like, write me an essay about World War II with 100 words, because of course that is the question that I received. So why should I take more actions on that? And what you can see is that ChatGPT will actually do that for you and will send you the complete text. And I can actually share that already to my teacher. The problem here is that a teacher is actually doing this assignment every year. And every year, the teacher has a lot of different students doing that same assignment. So he knows the vocabulary, he knows how people are speaking about it, knows how people are writing in their language, but also on their level of expertise at that moment. And that will evolve over time, of course, but still that is on another degree than someone who, well, maybe is on our level. So what will happen is that this teacher is reading this, and even if it's not even allowed to use ChatGPT for this assignment, then a lot of red flags will be raised, because he will see that this will not be written by a student. And this is actually an example of a very bad prompt, because my goal is not met. I did want to get that really high grade. Well, I didn't, because my teacher is, well, getting some red flags that something is not the way it should go. So let's refine this prompt a little bit and make it different, add some more context to it to make sure that I actually can share this with my teacher. So I did that here. I did the same. Write me an essay about World War II with 100 words. But now I'm also asking it to act like a student with A2 English in the first class of high school and don't use any difficult words. Well, I'm already saying that a bit by asking it to use A2 English, which is an English level, language level. So for example, you're starting at A1. A2, then B1, B2, and C1 and C2. And C2 is just an expert native speaker. So this way I'm prompting ChatGPT to make sure that ChatGPT will reflect an output that, well, suits me. And I tried this already at some schools. I did actually ask quite some people who are teaching students, well, with some examples, which one do you think that I wrote myself and which one is written by ChatGPT? And everyone picked this example. Yeah, I don't know if that says something about my English, hopefully not. But well, you can imagine that this really makes a difference in what your outcome is and what actually how you can achieve your goals. Well, while doing a lot of sessions about prompt engineering and speaking about it, I run into the same question over and over again. And that was, how do I remember and how do I know what should be in my prompt? And for that specific reason, I created the Crafting AI prompt framework. Now, I think it's really easy to remember because you are crafting prompts. So that is all you need to know. And this framework will really help you to get to the right prompts. It has some building blocks where we will go through during the rest of this session to help you create the right prompts. So during the rest of this session, I will walk through this framework, and it might maybe not directly get to the point, but I will make sure that you will understand it during the examples. So don't worry if it doesn't get directly clear for you. I will make sure that will happen on the end, and otherwise feel free to ask some questions. And please note, I'm using ChatGPT as an example throughout this session, but you can also apply this on other generative AI tools or even the OpenAI application if you're prompting towards it with your, for example, Java applications. So let's walk through the Crafting AI prompts framework. The Crafting AI prompts framework has 3 phases. First of all, the crafting phase, where we are actually going to craft and write that message, where we are going to create that prompt. You have to take a few things into consideration, and you have to think about a few things, and I will walk through them in the next part of this presentation. Secondly, we have the validation phase. And this is something that is very much overlooked by a lot of companies, because make sure that your prompts are non-disclosure, taking it into account. So for example, you're not sharing any confidential data, definitely not when using ChatGPT, which is storing your information to their environments. But also that you're taking GDPR into account, so that you're not sharing any details from people. But also that it's interactive so that you can go back and forth within your conversation with ChatGPT, and that it's goal driven so that you actually reach the goal. And also here I will go step by step through in the next part. And finally, we have the enhancement phase. So yeah, tools like generative AI are evolving really fast. New techniques for prompt engineering, etc., are coming up every week. So it's very important to, well, stay ahead of that and understand what is going on, but also understand a bit more about the model itself. But also that if your goal is not met, that you're using that interactive approach, which I will explain later, to actually get to the desired output, and that you're really validating what you get as an output. And this is very important because we have seen already a lot of examples from lawyers in America, for example, who did their complete cases with it, but failed because ChatGPT came up with laws that didn't exist. So be very, very, very clear about that. Make sure you validate the output yourself. So let's move to the crafting phase. The very first phase of the Crafting AI prompt framework, where we are actually going to, well, write that prompt. And first of all, we need to have context. If I'm just asking, for example, to write a LinkedIn post, I'm going to use that throughout this session as an example. I want to write a LinkedIn post about this session. If I just ask it to write a LinkedIn post about this session, then yeah, what session am I actually talking about? ChatGPT doesn't know that. So you really have to feed it with information that could help the model to actually craft the right output for you that suits your needs. So for example, I'm going to share that I did a presentation about mastering prompt engineering, Supercharge Your Productivity, mastering prompt engineering at JCOM World 2023. A lot of nice audience in the room. We walked through the Crafting AI prompts framework, and well, maybe I want to share some key takeaways already and also ask it for that later on, where I will tell you more about later. But really be as specific as possible what you actually did and what it should take into account within the context to actually craft for you the right output. Well, you can do a lot of things more here, like give it examples, quotes, arguments, maybe even counter arguments, really depending on what your task will be on the end. But really make sure that you share at least as much as possible, at least as much as possible information that you can think of. And if you're, for example, doing this for a lawsuit, what I mentioned earlier, then make sure that you also bring the laws that you want to include, or maybe even talk with ChatGPT what you could do, but verify it as well for yourself. Then we have the register. And here you're actually going to describe what the tone or grammar should be, or even in which language you want the output to be. And this is very important because if you don't do this and you're just asking ChatGPT to write a LinkedIn post, then it will probably be a very exciting message. Like, I'm super excited to share that I just gave a presentation about Supercharge your productivity at JCon World. And this is because it has been trained on a lot of data on the internet, also including a lot of people from America. And well, that might not be the same tone as you are using in your country. I'm living in the Netherlands. We are a bit more down to earth, let's say. We are less excited than people from America. Well, I'm maybe not the typical person from the Netherlands because I'm mostly, definitely if I'm talking about this, very exciting. So that would suit my needs maybe, but that doesn't mean that it does for you. So really think about what is your tone of voice, how are you writing your stories, and you can actually even feed this by just sharing some blog content or whatever you wrote on the internet already to make ChatGPT learn from how you were writing before. And also there, I will share how that works later on. The acting role. You can actually use acting roles within your prompt. So for example, act as a LinkedIn expert. And this will actually trigger some kind of template within ChatGPT or OpenAI models. And what will happen is that it will trigger some default standards already for you. So for example, if I'm asking it to act like a LinkedIn expert, it will automatically be a bit more formal. It will use hashtags in your in your output. It will use emoticons instead of bullet points because you cannot add bullet points within LinkedIn. So it will know that already. It learned that from the data on the internet. So it's actually going to apply that for you already in the output. And you can still refine that by yourself. You can even say like, I want to act like, please act like a LinkedIn expert, but make sure that you are not so exciting or that you are just not too formal. You can change that to your needs, but this is a really nice starting point actually to start with. Also, you can ask it to write something from a specific point of view. So for example, if you're writing something and you want to know how, well, maybe your manager is looking at it or just a manager, then you can ask for some feedback about it from that specific point of view. And that can really help you, definitely if we're talking about brainstorming, to get some nice ideas about some, well, other perspectives on what you're writing or what you're sharing with your audience maybe later on. Then we are going to the format, and this one is also very, very important. So you have a specific goal in mind and probably also what the output should be. And I think user stories, we are all Java developers, so we all know user stories, hopefully. User stories are written and most companies differently. There are some specific formats used and shared on the internet, which we should use. But still, most companies are using their own formats, their own way of writing, their own way of sharing the information and requirements to the development teams. And you probably want to apply to this format if you're writing user stories, for example, throughout ChatGPT or any other system. And you really want to specify in that way how the output should be. So for example, if you start with a small description, then some requirements, acceptance criteria, or maybe even some test information, if that is your format, you're going to share that to ChatGPT so that it knows that it should apply the same format for its output. And why do you want this? Well, this way you can simply copy paste it to, for example, Jira or even use Zapier or other automation tools to directly integrate it. But this way you don't have to edit it later on. So you really get the output that is needed for your specific use case. Now, you can also ask it, for example, to store things in table formats, include hashtags, bullet points, graphs, templates, or whatever you're thinking of. But please make sure that you're really specifying what the format should be. So actually, you don't have to do that much work on the end anymore, because ChatGPT, for example, is already doing that for you. So why should you not be very clear on that as well, so that it will be done directly? Yeah, and finally, you have some kind of task, right? So you want to write a LinkedIn post, or you want to make some user stories. And be very specific on that, but also make sure that you are using one task per prompt. This is really one of the best things that I've learned. You can ask it to do whatever you want, but if you are specific to one specific task per prompt, this will really level up the quality of the output. So, for example, summarize this text, or, well, create this user story in a specific format, of course. Revise this document, or review my LinkedIn post, whatever you want, but be very specific and be very clear that it should be one goal-driven and one specific thing that you're sharing with it. So one task. And this brings me actually to the craft, right? I'm crafting a message. So context, register, acting role, format, and task. And if we have made up that prompt, and we actually wrote the prompt, then we want to validate it. We want to make sure that what we have written also applies to some standards. So first of all, during the validation phase, we want to make sure that it's interactive. For example, if I'm asking it to generate images, it is very valuable to ask for the seed numbers. And this might sound very technical, but seed numbers are like IDs that are used by tools to generate the images, where you can later come back to. So for example, if I'm going further in that chat, I can still refer, hey, I do want to change something from this seed number. Can you do that for me? And if you don't have those seed numbers, it will be way harder to get through your conversation, because you have to point out which image it is, or even maybe upload the image again. And that takes some extra time. So think about, what do I need as output? So I want an image, but I also want the seed number. Or if I want, for example, to generate a table, then also start each row with a unique ID. So you can actually reflect back to that ID number and ask ChatGPT, hey, you wrote a very nice idea at point 3. Can you give me more information about that? And then you're actually having that interactive approach. And then maybe even the most important thing, if we're talking about the company context. So we are all working for companies, and we want to make sure that our data is secure, right? So you don't want to share any confidential data with, for example, ChatGPT. And there are some options here. You can actually opt out from it, that it's not training on your data, or that it's not storing your data, but still it is sending it to the environments of those applications and those models. So be very careful with that. And I'm going to share with you also a way that you can get around it, that you're not sharing data, but still using those tools. But really think about that. So don't hit enter with your prompt and sending a lot of context to ChatGPT that might affect your company. A very good example here is that people from Samsung, for example, they share a lot of data from their repositories, and that came up in the model, and people were actually able to get that from ChatGPT. So really think about that. But also GDPR. It's really easy, of course, to ask questions about certain people. I did it for myself. I tried, what can I get from ChatGPT about myself? And I was pretty in shock what it retrieved from me. Well, that's, of course, all data I shared myself, but still, think really good about what you're asking and what you're sharing to ChatGPT if it's going about people. So if you're asking or feeding it with context about people, that might also affect the GDPR rules within Europe, etc. So think about that really well. Then goal-driven. Yeah, you have a specific goal. So maybe you remember in the start of this session, I started with the case about the student from the high school who was going to write an essay about World War II. And he didn't met his goal because his goal was not to, well, do that assignment. No, his goal was to actually get a high grade. So that student just wants a high grade and really doesn't care about the World War II assignment. He has to do that, but still he just wants to get that grade, right? Definitely if I'm looking back to myself as a lazy student, I just did want to get my grade and I was done with it. I did have some other things I did really enjoy, but maybe not the history things. So what is your goal? Think about that. And then it's way easier to reflect on your prompt. Will I meet my goal? And will I get the output that I desire? So think about that very well. And if you did that, so you're really sure it's interactive, definitely sure that there is no company data or GDPR data in it, and it's goal driven, then you can hit enter and send that prompt to, for example, ChatGPT. And what we are going to do then is we get the output from ChatGPT and we are going to reflect on that back. So did we actually met our goal? So we put a goal there, did we meet it? And did we actually, or do we still have to refine it? And if that is the case, and we are having that interactive approach, it's of course very easy to get through it. And we are going to adapt and improve on it. And I think this is a very good example because I did a game with ChatGPT. I asked it to do the Hangman game with me. I hope you know this game. And I tried to get through it, but I asked it to use an English word that is actually existing word. And not too hard because I'm not a native English speaker. So, well, I don't want to have a very difficult word that I can not come up with. So I tried to get through this, but eventually I gave up. You can see that in this image. And what you see is it also mentions, no worries, the word was, yeah, I don't even know how to pronounce this. And then just kidding, that's not a real word. So it does understand my question, but it's still not giving the output that I did want to achieve. So validate it yourself, because also if you're going to look at the answer, which is in the below here, I don't know if you see my pointer, but it's different than the word above because the I is on the fourth dot of the word from the game, but in the actually answer, it's on the second position. So you can see that even though I came up with it, then probably it was wrong because it doesn't meet the requirements of the question. So really validate the output. And I think this is a very good example that it is still hallucinating a bit. It might do things wrong. And this has all to do with predictions. What happens is that ChatGPT is actually making a token and then adding new tokens after it to generate words. And of course, that can still go wrong, mostly not on text. So it will have a very good text and it will be, well, still working very well to make synthesis, etc. But I think this is a very good example that if you have just one word that even is split up in characters, it might go wrong. So keep that in mind and validate the output always yourself. Here's the human aspect that still applies. And if you did that and you see that something is not valid, well, in this part where I was playing this game, I'm of course not going to continue because I know it goes wrong and I'm spending a lot of time which I don't want to. But otherwise, if we have a really good use case like the LinkedIn post or the user stories, for example, then I want to adapt and improve on it. So I want to make sure that, well, maybe I'm going to refine a part of it, ask it to, well, change the description a little bit or change the second paragraph of it to get to the desired outputs. But also, yeah, for example, definitely if we're talking about ChatGPT, there is happening a lot there, also on company base last week, but definitely also on what is developed there. So every week, new things came up. And also if we are talking about GPTs, which are custom GPTs, which are introduced earlier, they are evolving really quickly because now people can actually build their own custom ChatGPT that you can apply on your environment and, well, do some extra specific context-based tasks. So that's very nice, but it's evolving very fast. So having some knowledge about what is happening and having some ideas about new technologies, etc., about in this area will really help you also generate new prompts. So take that in mind. What can I do next time better? And maybe even what kind of tools can I use to, well, apply on my prompts to get a better output? My best tip here is follow the right people on, for example, LinkedIn or X, formal Twitter, to make sure that you, well, don't have to spend that much time about it, but people will actually feed your timeline with very interesting information, and you can just read that quickly and get the information you need. So then we are actually through the framework. And then you will get to something like a prompt that is like acting as a role, perform task in format requirements, use register or writing style, and use this context. Now, how does that look like if I'm talking about a LinkedIn post, for example? It would be very fun if you're going to try this today to write a LinkedIn post about JCon. Then it could be something like acting as a LinkedIn expert. Write a LinkedIn post for me, and this is very important because if you don't do that, it might be that ChatGPT is going to write a LinkedIn post as a LinkedIn expert. So it will be, as a LinkedIn expert, I'm very excited to share that I just joined JCon World 2023, and that's of course not what you want to achieve. So think about that very well. And then in format requirements, I want to use some very good and engaging hashtags. I want to use some key takeaways with emoticons instead of bullet points, etc. And use register writing style. I'm just going to grab some previous LinkedIn posts that I'm going to share with ChatGPT. So use this post as an example for my writing style. Then I'm just pasting that part. And use this context where I'm going to share a lot of information about, well, for example, your day, or in my case, what I did at JCon, so this presentation. You can read much more about this at craftingaiprompts.org. It is not based on any organization or something. It's just I'm sharing there a lot of information regarding the framework, but also regarding some interesting topics that you should be aware of. And one of them is, for example, right now, prompt injections, which are not included in these presentations, but which are a really big security risk, definitely if you're talking about, for example, the API usage. So if you're building an application, then please go to the website and check the prompt injection part, because it's very important to understand how that works so that you can actually make sure you are getting, you are securing your applications with that before actually sharing it to the internet. But please note, this is an example. You can use the different elements on any way you want. So if you would like to start with a task or with the acting role or whatever, then that's possible. It doesn't matter how you're writing the format. It really makes sure, but it only helps you to understand what should be in your prompt or what is really useful. For example, I will have some examples where I just first have some prompts and then going to add context. That's also a way to do it, but I'm still using all of the building blocks. And make sure you remove any abstraction, because garbage in is garbage out. If you're not clear, then ChatGPT might just make up a lot of things, or if you're using any other generative AI models, it will just come up with a lot of things, and that's not what you want to achieve. So if I'm asking to write a LinkedIn post or a user story, it will write me a user story, but yeah, about what? It will just come up with something, and that's not what you want to achieve. So be very clear and specific on it. So this is it about the framework. Now let's dive into some examples. And first of all, non-disclosure, because I think this is very important if you're talking in company context. So if you want to write, for example, LinkedIn post, I did this for one of the previous sessions at another conference I did. And what you can see here is I didn't know yet if I could share the company name and the people for who invited me for that conference. So what I did here is I did already prepare the complete text. So I did already make the prompt, actually get the output. But I use placeholders to make sure that I can actually replace those placeholders later on with the actual data. So for example, the company name and the people who invited me. And this is also a way you can walk around with other things. Definitely, if you're using ChatGPT, if you're using the OpenAI parts, there are other restrictions that you could use, that it's not sharing your data. But in this case, definitely if you're using the newest version of ChatGPT with all the new DALL-E 3, etc., it will share your data. So make sure that how you apply those kind of placeholders to secure your data. Now, this variable thing, placeholders, can also be used in prompt recipes, which, well, will really help you to build applications. So if you're going to build applications with, for example, Java and have to store prompts, I would highly recommend using prompt recipes. And you can read a lot more about that on craftingaiprompts.org to make sure how you understand how this complete architecture works, because I cannot fit that within 45 minutes. But it's really worth looking into it if you're going to work with those kind of things. Now, the next thing really changed the way I'm working, because I'm very curious. Let me know in the chat. I want to make it a bit more interactive. So I'm really curious about how you're doing this. Who is using, for example, YouTube to learn new things? So for example, you want to learn maybe a new language or some new things about Java. Who is watching also YouTube videos to get that? Please let me know in the chat. There might be some delay on it, so I will continue, but I'm really curious about if you're using YouTube for that. Because I do actually the same. I did always just watch YouTube to get a lot of information and to learn new things, because it's exciting. People are sharing it mostly on an exciting way, and it's also exciting me then to do those kind of things and inspiring me. But from now on, I'm not doing that anymore. And that might sound really stupid, but I run into a lot of times the same thing. Like someone was sharing a YouTube video with me and then says like, wow, you have to watch this. He is talking about a very interesting thing about, let's say, a certain subject. And then I was watching a YouTube video for 2 hours, for example, and it only was 10 minutes within that video. And of course, on the very end. So I was completely watching that YouTube video. And then on the end, it came to the topic that I was looking for. So that is, of course, not really productive if you're really looking for a specific point. So what I'm doing right now is I go to YouTube, go to the 3 dots there. You can see that now on the screen. Click on View Transcript. And I made this screenshot on my own laptop, which is in Dutch. So it's in Dutch, but it will be the same for you in English. Click on it, and then you will get actually the transcript from that video. You can copy that and paste it in a tool like ChatGPT Splitter. And I know I did just test it. I always test the slides before I'm sharing it at conferences, but I just found out that ChatGPT Splitter is offline for some reason, but there are a lot of other tools that do actually the same. So please keep that in mind. You upload the data here, and I'm doing this for a specific reason. If the video is very long, then the context might be too long to share in one chat of ChatGPT. And you always have to make sure that you stay within the context window, which is at this moment, I think about 332K of tokens, but of characters. But please make sure that you keep within that window, but also that you can share it to ChatGPT. And one prompt cannot be that long, but for example, ChatGPT Splitter can chunk it up and can actually share it that way to ChatGPT. So what I do here is I paste the text, the transcript, process it, and what you can see also in the prompt that it's using is also using an acting role. It's also using a format, etc. So it applies those things as well. It processes it, and you will get the chunks from ChatGPT Splitter. You paste this back to ChatGPT, and now the magic happens, because now I can just ask ChatGPT, for example, can you give me the key takeaways from this video? And ChatGPT will just bring all those different key takeaways to you, and you can actually start watching from a specific point. Because, for example, if I want to know more about concerns with AI integrations about this video, because I like the GDPR aspect, I want to know how that works, I can simply prompt ChatGPT, hey, I like point 4, concerns with AI integrations. From which point in this video should I start watching? And it will just give you the output with the right timestamp. You can move to that timestamp in the video and start watching from there. And that will really, really help you in your productivity because what I just mentioned, if it's a 2-hour video, you can just scroll through that. And maybe in this case, it was even 1 hour and 8 minutes of a 1.5 hour video or something. So, well, I actually won like over an hour of time. So that's really helpful. And you can speed up things because maybe you just are okay with getting the key takeaways and that's enough for you. Yeah, you can read this quickly. You can get the information and move on. So this is really helpful, I think. And I'm using this now a lot. But maybe even more interesting for definitely Java developer is our IDEs. And I think that will massively change the way we are working. The thing here is that I'm always using IntelliJ. I'm very curious which IDE you're using. So let me also know that in the chat. I think it's nice to know from each other what kind of IDEs are we using. So let me know. But I'm using IntelliJ. And here the thing is, there is a waiting list for the AI assistants. Copilot doesn't have that. I GitHub Copilot, I tried that one as well. And it's really awesome what you can do with there. But I did want to use IntelliJ. So I reached out to IntelliJ. Hey, I have a very nice presentation. Can you please get me that license so that I can get into the AI assistants? And I did, but it was on Friday. So it was a bit of a struggle to, well, really dive into it and get all the exciting things out of it. But I did already do quite some things with it, which I'm going to share with you. Because, for example, I'm reviewing a lot of code for my training sessions I'm also doing. And if someone is now making some code I don't understand directly because get a number, yeah, what does that mean? I can just ask ChatGPT to refactor it for me. And I can click on the icon that I highlighted, and it will actually bring back that exact part of code. So I don't really have to think about it anymore. If it's unclear, I can just ask ChatGPT, hey, refactor my code. IntelliJ code assistant to refactor my code, and it will do that automatically for me. I don't have to think about it. I can just read the refactored code, which is much easier, and I can continue. But that's not everything. I don't like writing documentation. Hopefully that's also not really needed, definitely if you're using and applying clean code principles. But there might be some options that you want to write documentation, or maybe you just don't get what exactly is happening within a certain method. Then it could be valuable to get some information about that method. And you can just simply ask IntelliJ AI assistants to write you the documentation so that you don't have to do that. So let me show you how this works. You go to this refactored code, which I just did, click on it, and then ask the AI actions to do a certain prompt. And those are prompts that you can fill in yourself. So I think the previous framework part will really help you because you can now create your own prompts. And voila, it's actually writing for you, in this case, the part of the documentations for this method. But you can go wild with this, of course. You can also make it explain things or put it in certain formats, or maybe even make it ready so that you can upload it to, well, Confluence or whatever part of documentation you want to use. So I think this really can help you a lot, and is super nice to introduce within your company. Now, the next things are from the documentation, and which I did really enjoy reading, and which I think that will really help. So you might see, you can see on the top example that you can actually ask the AI assistant to explain comments with AI. So what happened actually in those comments, you don't have to go through it yourself anymore. No, IntelliJ will do that for you. We'll go through it and we'll actually explain what happened in those comments, so you have a clear understanding about the changes that were made, and maybe even find faster why a certain bug appeared. And if you're running into a bug, also that has really nice new options, because you can just ask AI to explain what is happening in those issues. So for example, in the below, in the image on the bottom, you will see there is a Java heap space, an exception. You can ask an out of memory error, sorry. You can ask it to explain that error for you. So it will actually get the information, explain it to you, and you can continue with that. And I think this really helps you. But there's one more thing. In Copilot, you can write a comment and start with a queue to ask a question. And I did really like that one, but IntelliJ just had a chat window on the side, which can help really junior developers. So for example, if you're running into Git issues or something, you can just ask it, how do I undo my merge, for example? And this will give you the information, also explain how you should do it or why you should take certain steps. And that will really help junior developers, for example, to speed up their productivity and to help them get through the project very fast. But also, for example, new people that are joining your company or want to get more information about the project you're working on, this can really help explain things within your environment. So for example, also what does this part of code, or what you can go wrong in this method, or do you see any bugs even? All those kind of things are easily done by the chat window from IntelliJ. Now, the last thing that I want to share, and I do this also a lot of myself. I don't know who knows about rubber ducking. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right in English, but this is like a method that you put a rubber duck on your desk. And if you're running into an issue or a bug or something, you're going to explain it to that rubber duck, and that will help you actually fix the issue mostly, because you're explaining the problem, and maybe you have had that also with some of your peers. If you're explaining the problem, you're like, oh, wait, I already know what the answer is. And that is the way you can also apply on those kind of rubber ducks. But I would change that a little bit. Why should we still use this kind of method? Why are we still explaining it to someone else or explaining it to a rubber duck, which is nice, but I think we should change it to GPT ducking or rubber GPTing. And the reason for that is you can simply ask questions to ChatGPT or to your code assistants in your IDE and get the reflection back. So instead of just having a conversation without getting any response, you can actually have a conversation and get back information from those AI tools, which will really help you and actually also guide you in your thoughts. So maybe you are not thinking about everything, and those tools can really help you get to better results and higher quality. So I really enjoyed that, doing it already with ChatGPT, but now also with IntelliJ code assistants, but also maybe for you, if I see also people saying some other things in Visual Studio Code or GitHub Copilot. This image was, by the way, also created by ChatGPT with DALL-E 3. So yeah, you can go wild with it, I think. A lot of information in 45 minutes. I'm super excited about the subject, Jack. I think you have seen that, and I can imagine that it's a lot of information within only 45 minutes. So what I did, I created this cheat sheet that you can use to actually help you go through the framework. It will really help you, guide you step by step, what you should think about crafting your prompts. So make sure you're making a screenshot from this, or now getting your phone to actually go through the cheat sheet that you can download it and help you craft your very first prompt. And maybe that's for that LinkedIn post, just to have some fun today, or your Twitter post, but maybe also to start it with coding or generating user stories or think about anything else. I think the very nice thing about this is I did this session already a lot of times also at companies, and I get a lot of feedback from LinkedIn from people. Oh, I did things in one day what normally took me like 3 days. So that's super exciting for me as well. So I would really love to hear from you as well. That's it for me. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, then feel free to use the chat, or I don't know if there is a moderator now that will still be here. But otherwise, I want to thank you very much and have a great day at JCon World.